Howdy everyone, my name is Griffin Furlong. I am a professional engineer in the state of Florida, and I have over 6 years of experience using AutoCAD and AutoCAD Civil3D. In today's video, I'm going to teach you the 5 essential building blocks that you need to know before you start drafting anything in AutoCAD. If you don't know what AutoCAD is a program used in the engineering field and even architecture to create construction plans. AutoCAD is used for 2D drawings, architectural plans, construction plans, even AutoCAD Civil3D, which you can create profiles, alignments, surfaces. It's pretty much the building blocks for designing anything that you see around us. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. The absolute number one thing out of all of my lists that I could ever teach about AutoCAD, the number one thing that tricks people up is the external reference, also known as an XREF. I want to hit on that topic as my number one. Now, what the heck is an external reference? An external reference is a drawing that you will be referencing into your current drawing. So right now I am in this drawing number one, drawing one that shows the title of the drawing that I'm in. Now, in order to actually see if I have any external references in this drawing, what I can do is go to this command line and I can do XREF. So if anyone ever says XREF, that is an external reference. I'm going to go ahead and press XREF, and then we get this external references dialog box that pops up. It's showing that I have a reference in here, but this is just my current drawing, and that's where it'll say type current. So this is my current drawing. I don't have any external references in here. Now, if I wanted to add an external reference, I can go up here to this little box here, and I can attach a DWG. Again, a DWG is an AutoCAD drawing file. What you can also do is you have this little drop down here, and you can attach an image, you can attach a DWF, DGN, PDF, you can attach any of these types of documents in here. For this purpose, I'm going to show you how to attach a DWG. Now I'm going to scroll and find the drawing that I want to attach. I'm going to attach this sheet here, this drawing called PGD. And you're going to see it load, and it's going to ask me for a few questions here. I'm going to walk through each one of these here. So you have a different reference type. You have an attachment and you have an overlay. This is always a question that gets popped up with any young engineer or EI is what is the difference between an attachment and overlay? Now here's how I break that down. What an attachment is if I were to attach this drawing as an attachment, any other drawings that are attached in that drawing now come into mine. So let's say if I had a base drawing with 3 different drawings attached in that drawing, all of those would come up as separate attachments. Now what an overlay is just the drawing that you're overlaying into your drawing. So if that drawing had the 3 different external references attached, it won't show all of those different drawings. I will leave some more information in the description on the main difference between attachment and overlay and some other links so you guys can understand it fully. Second thing it's going to ask you is scale. So if you wanted to have a certain scale, you can specify that on screen. In this case, I don't want any sort of different scale because I know that the drawing that I'm referencing is at the very scale that I want it to be at. Next is the insertion point. You can specify on screen exactly where you want it inserted. But again, for my purpose, it's already in a geolocation. It's already in a specific location that I want it to pop up in. I don't want to have to specify the location. Then you can also choose to rotate. I don't want to rotate, but if you wanted to rotate your external reference, you could totally do so. And then you have some other factors down here, and honestly, I never really touched this. You can also have different path types. You can have no path, relative path, and full path, but I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty. I always typically do the relative path. So now I'm ready to attach this external reference. I'm going to press OK here. It's going to take a second to load. I'm going to go ahead and close this external reference dialog box. Now I do not see anything. So if you are new to AutoCAD, I highly suggest you learn the command zoom extents. So in order to do zoom extents, I'm going to go and press Z. For zoom, I'm going to press enter. Also, you can use spacebar for your enter. So you don't have to press enter, you can press spacebar. Now it's going to ask which of these zooms that I want to do. I said that I want to do extents, and what that does is it zooms all the way out so you can see everything within this drawing. Okay, so I still don't really see it, but I see something right there. So let me zoom into this guy. All right. So I got some stuff in here. It's not exactly what I wanted to see. I thought I had a little bit more stuff in here, but so again, in order to see your external reference, you can type in XREF, and now we have an external reference. So now we have an external reference dialog box, and you can see the status is loaded, you can see the size, the type, it's overlaid, and you can tell by this little clip that it is an attachment. Now, if I wanted to unload this, you can right click and do unload. And all that means is that it's still in your drawing, but it's just not loaded. You can't see anything. And I highly suggest, if you have really big drawing file sizes and you have a lot of attachments, I would highly recommend unloading them as you're doing some work. It'll improve your efficiency for sure. If you wanted it to come back, you can right click and do reload, and then it'll pop back. You also have the ability to just simply detach, so you can just wipe it away completely. I'm not going to do that because I still want it there. You can also go to the save path down here and find where the path is. So the path is currently in that folder. So just a little tidbit on external references. Now, we're not quite done with external references, so I think one of the big key items for an external reference is understanding how AutoCAD thinks about it, especially in terms of layers. So right now, this XREF is on a layer. I brought this drawing in, and it's currently on a specific layer. Now, how do I know which layer that it's on? Well, right now I have it selected, and I'm going up here to this layer icon here, or even in this layer properties, and notice how it's on 0. So right now this XREF is on layer 0. I think best practice is to have a particular XREF layer dedicated for XREFs all the way down here called XREF. The reason why I like that is because another way to hide your XREF is to freeze the layer that it's on. So if I go up here to the layer manager, you can actually freeze that layer, which freezes your external reference. But before I dive too deep, I'm kind of skipping ahead. So now I want to show you guys number 2 on my list for the most essential things that you need to know. Number 2 on my list is the layer manager. We were already kind of in it, looking at it, showing that the external reference was on layer 0, and then we changed it to the XREF layer, but you must know the layer manager. What I will tell beginner EIs and engineers is if you have a problem in CAD, it's usually some sort of layer issue or a style issue. I promise you that. What I mean by that is if you're expecting something to be on or showing, I promise you it's always something with the layers. So let me show you what I'm talking about. In order to get to the layer manager, you can go up here to the icon, the home ribbon tab, or you can type in layer, enter. This is how you pull up your layer manager. Now notice how we have a tree. I think this is very, very important for beginners. This tree is extremely important to know how you're going to have layer control in your drawing. What I mean by that is let's go and click this XREF tree. Now, the biggest mistake I made as an early CAD user was I was trying to change the different colors of the layer, let's say this blue line here, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So the wrong way of changing a color in this drawing is to go and open that the external reference, which you're opening the actual source drawing. I ended up going to the source drawing and ended up changing a whole bunch of stuff, colors of lines, different styles, and that wasn't the intent. That's not what I was trying to do. What I was trying to do was just change the color and styles within this drawing, because now if you go and change all of the source drawing information, you're changing that source drawing information in every other drawing that it could be referenced in. And that's a really important lesson that I can't emphasize enough. So let's actually check out what I'm talking about here. So I want to change the color of this little basin right here. And let me do a command. This might be a new command for you. I'm going to do the XList command. What the XList command does is it gives you the layer name of one of the external reference layers. So I type in XList, I clicked on that blue line there, and it gave me the layer name that's within that external reference. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to look for this PR-basin in this XREF layer. So here's PR basin, and right now it's blue, it has a particular line type. Now if I change anything in this drawing, it won't change the source drawing. That is my intent. So if I wanted to change this red, I can click this color, and then you get this dialog box to pop up. And now I can choose a different color. So let's say if I wanted to use red, I can click red, and now it changes to red. And if I were to open up the source drawing, that layer will still be blue in that source drawing, and you won't affect anything. You can also change the line type. So if you click line type, you get a dialog box coming up here. Let's say I wanted to just make it a continuous solid line. Well, now it's a continuous solid line, and you have not affected the source drawing. Let me show you a couple tips with the layer manager. If you wanted to create a new layer, you go up to this icon right here and do new layer, and then now you can start making whatever you want. So if I wanted to make some PR road layers, I can do that. I can select whatever color I want. I can even do it on a note plot setting. So let's say, maybe I just wanted a layer to do all of my working lines on. I can do something called Z working, and if I double click it, I make it current, and I can have a non-plot layer, which is good for, just general drafting. I can go around in this drawing and just start making, general lines in here as my working. And obviously it's not showing because I think the transparency is pretty low, so you can also change this transparency here. So if I go to here, maybe change that back to 0, maybe I'll get a line showing up, and voila, it ended up popping back up. All right, so we've walked through external references, or XREFs, and then we've walked a little bit through the layer manager. The number 3 thing that I think is absolutely critical is your F controls. And what I mean by F control are some of these icons down here. So there are some quick controls in order to make drafting a little bit easier. So let's walk through some of these. This one that I want to highlight right here is called ortho mode. Ortho mode can be clicked on and off through F8. So if you do F8, it can click on and it can click off. And what ortho means is that it's going to help you draw straight lines. So if I do the polyline command and I'm in ortho, notice how even if I'm bringing the cursor all the way to, kind of a 45-degree angle, it's still going to draw a straight line. This is absolutely critical when you're doing any sort of drafting and you want straight lines. And again, you can toggle it off by doing F8, or you can go down there to the little icon, and now it's not necessarily a perfectly, straight north, south, east, west line. I can go into whatever direction I want here. So that's a critical one that I would keep in your handbook. You're going to be toggling F8 all the time. Another critical one that I want to show you guys is these snaps. You got to know your snaps. So what a snap does is it references and snaps to a particular point. Now, all of these different points can be whatever you want, whether you want to snap to an endpoint, a midpoint, center. I'm not going to read this whole list, but the world is yours here. So if I wanted to snap to just endpoints, I can go around and X all these off and just have the endpoint snapped here. And just to keep in mind, we're going through all the F commands. So this one's F3. So if you wanted to toggle snaps, you can toggle by pressing F3. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to do the polyline command. Notice how I hover close to an endpoint. It's going to show you that green little box right there. That means that it wants to snap. So as I get closer, it wants to snap to the endpoint. Now notice how if I turn this guy off and do the same thing here with polyline, notice how I'm not getting any green box anymore. That ends up becoming a really big problem if you're a drafter and you think that you're close to this endpoint here, and then you start drafting these lines, and then lo and behold, you end up realizing that these lines aren't exactly touching, which, man, I got really close there, huh? But let's say you're drafting, and you're trying to get something into construction document form, and you have a whole bunch of lines like this crossing over and not touching, you're going to get a lot of false dimensions there, and in my eyes, that's pretty sloppy CAD work. What we like is for lines to be touching exactly where they're supposed to go, which is on the endpoints. Now let me show you another one here. So you can draft a little circle, and let's toggle on the snaps, and I want to do center. So with center, I'm going to do the polyline command. Notice how I hover over this circle, it'll go right to the center. You see this little plus sign? So if I hover over the circle, it's going to go right to that center. Now another way to access your snaps, instead of just going down below or toggling F3, is let's say if you're in a command, what you can do is you can hold down the control button and right click, and then you can select a quick snap that you want to do. So let's say if I wanted to get the intersection right here, I can toggle that intersection, and now it should be able to snap at an intersection. Let's snap to this other intersection. Okay, notice how I thought it was going to snap to another intersection, but no. You have to do that control right click again to keep this moving forward. Now, if you always wanted an intersection as your snap, just a reminder, you can go down there and you can do intersection. Always keep track of your snaps. So always keep in mind F3 is your snaps, which is so critical when you're a drafter, and then F8 is ortho, where you can go up, down, left, and right. So those are the absolute most critical F commands. There is one more that I don't necessarily use that much, but I think it's pretty cool. So the other one is snapping reference line, which can be toggled by F11. Now what that does is it just shows a reference line that might be perpendicular or parallel to a particular line. And let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. So let me hover over. I got the P-line command going on. I'm going to hover over this point, and let me kind of start moving my cursor a little bit. Notice how there's like that dashed green line up top. Again, that's because my snapped reference line is on. So really all that helps do is kind of locate a point that might be perpendicular to a line, or a continuous, or like a continuous construction line of that point. But I don't really use that one that much. All right, now that I taught you a little bit about external references, the layer manager, and then number 3, some of those nifty F commands, I'm going to go on to the number 4 most critical item that you need to know when you're doing AutoCAD. Number 4 is paper space versus model space. This gets a lot of beginners confused, so I can't stress the importance of this enough. Right now, we are in model space, and the way that I know that is down here it says model. Now, if we click it, it'll take us to paper space. So that icon right there can go back between model and paper space. But notice how now when I select it, it's just clicking in to what is called a viewport. But I don't want to introduce a viewport yet. I want to show you these couple icons right here. So you have the model space tab, which is where we're doing all of our work. This is where we're putting in our external references, drafting lines, and basically building our model. Now, these other tabs are our layout tabs. Think of these as the sheets, the actual paper that we're going to print. This is the window into the design where we create viewports. And what a viewport is a viewport is like you are looking into a particular aspect of model space. And I'll show you what that means. So here we have this layout tab, and if I click this rectangle here, this is what is called a viewport. I know it's a viewport because the way that it's highlighted and this little icon right here, that's how I know it's a viewport. Another way to know that it's a viewport is typing in the properties, which is funny that we're talking about this because I'm going to combine number 4 and 5 here as we're learning about paper and model space. Number 5 most important thing is understanding your properties dialog box. Your properties dialog box will tell you anything that you need to know about a particular object. So in this case, I have this thing highlighted, this object, and if I go up here to properties, it's showing me that this is a viewport. Again, a viewport is the window that you're looking through into a particular zone of model space. We're going to come back to properties here, but I wanted to show you how I knew that this was a viewport. Another thing about paper space is you have some icons down here. Don't let it confuse you. We have this very important lock button. This is something that beginners struggle with. Whenever I'm finished with the drawing, I always lock the viewport, and I'll show you why. Let's say if you get a drafter coming in here and they start, double clicking here into model space and start zooming out and in, and well, now you've just changed the scale of that viewport, which is a no-no. In order to revert back, now you got to do Control Z and get all the way back to where you started. Now, in order to change the scale of this viewport, you're going to want to double click in here and change the scale. Here we have a list of scales. So if you know what scale you're trying to make your drawing, that's where you can set it. So let's say 1 inch equals 50. This thing is loading. Sometimes viewports can bog down your program here. It definitely thinks, especially if you have a whole bunch of text and different external references. I think one common practice that I do is I unload all of my external references, because honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a fatal error going on right here. Crossing my fingers. And of course, what did I expect? Which, this is actually a very important lesson. Whenever you're trying to change viewport scales, I would highly suggest that you just unload your external references as you're trying to do this, because this is the type of error that you might get, especially if your computer's thinking hard. This is a fatal error. This is something that you don't want. All right, we are back and we're rocking and rolling after that fatal error. I'm going to go back to where I was. Again, here is the viewport. We can set a particular scale. So for the scale for my drawing, we're going to do 1 inch equals 50. And again, for best practice, what I like to do is just lock the viewports when I am done. And again, think of paper space as what you are printing out. If you wanted to change the sheet name, you can right click that tab and you can do rename. So let's say, if your sheet number was like C500, then that will be the sheet name here. Another thing that you can do is that you can bring in templates for a particular title block. What a title block is if you've ever seen construction plans, they typically have a title block of like the name of the project or the scale, the rev clouds, all that fun stuff. So if you've set up any templates, you can bring and insert these as layouts. So I have a couple of templates, so I'm just going to bring in this exhibit here. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So notice how it creates it as another tab. Now we got a little nifty title block here. Notice how we have, a place to put project name, exhibit name. It's got a nice border. This could be something nice to print out and give to a client or give to your team. You got a scale automatically built in here that's referencing the viewport. I can show you guys how to create a template like this in a future video, but this is how you can set up your paper space to make something more clean. Notice here we still got the viewport in here, and we can double click and it is locked, so we're at a scale of 120. I think the last thing that I'll share about paper space versus model is that be very cautious of where you're placing text. You can have text in paper space if you want, but when I do that, I typically have text in paper space if it's like for a legend. But if you have a whole bunch of multi-leaders that are calling certain things out, like let's say lots or roadways, I think personally that it's best to just have that right into model space. Notice that I'm able to select this and I'm in paper space, so these little text arrows are in fact in paper space. So just keep track of where your text is, and if you want to delete these, you can highlight, type in erase, or just press delete. Now, the very last thing that I want to show you guys is number 5, the most critical, properties, the properties dialog box. I kind of introduced it there with the paper space and model, but I want to show you guys how you're able to identify the certain properties of objects. So the first thing that I want to do is just create a little rectangle. I'm going to create a little rectangle for you guys, and let's say, I really wanted to know the area of that rectangle. I mean, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. You can do area, type that command in, and you can do object. It's going to ask you to select an object, and then it can give you an area down there. Another way to find an area or anything about an object is you can type in prop for properties, press enter, and if I select this rectangle, I can go right over here to area, and it spits out the same area that it did in the other command. You can also get the length. You can understand what elevation this is at. If I wanted to set it at an elevation, you can change the different color, the layer, line type. You can pretty much do a whole bunch of fun stuff here in the properties dialog box. Another way that you can use this properties dialog box is you can actually perform a calculation. So I know that this area is in square feet because that is the default here. So in here you can do some quick calculations, and I can do divide by 43560 to get acres, so you can perform some calculations there in the properties dialog box. Alright guys, that's all I have for tonight. I wanted this to be a very basic beginner intro to the world of AutoCAD. If you master these 5 things in AutoCAD, you will be ahead of the curve, especially if you enter in any internship. Back when I was an intern, I really struggled with external references and layer managers and understanding how everything gets brought into a drawing. I definitely made a lot of mistakes, but I learned over time that it's not necessarily a mistake, it's only a lesson learned. I would say the best way to learn AutoCAD is just to indulge in all of the different icons, click around, be curious, you might even teach yourself something. Half the AutoCAD that I learned was either from YouTube or literally just spending a little bit of extra time after work diving into the different commands. If you found this video helpful, please comment below, and if you have any remaining questions, feel free to comment below. Also, I'm really curious how many AutoCAD users are out there. I'm really trying to understand if we have some beginner users or some expert users. That way I can curate some of my videos moving forward. That's all I have for today. I hope you guys have a good night, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.